Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the eCommerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mentoring Moments. I'm here with my mate Josiah, and he's got a few questions lined up for me today. He's always comes with a great agenda. He's always got well thought out questions, really clear goals to get out of our sessions together, and I always respect and love that. So over to you, Josiah. Pepper me with questions, and let's get stuck in, my friend.
Thanks for having me again, Jason. So first question we have is around our app pricing. Wanted to provide a bit of context. So eventually we want to target bigger brands, but understand that as we're just starting out, we need to work our way up from the smaller stores as we learn about all the different edge cases, right? And better understand our customers. So from my limited research and app store, based on app store reviews, based on talking to merchants, the small to mid-sized businesses don't seem to want to pay commissions as they feel like it's an unfair model. Everyone's trying to take a clip per sale nowadays in this current state of economy. So it's eating into profit margins, right? So among some of our mid-sized customers, we've helped, say for example, we've helped the brand bring in 20K revenue just over one weekend. Sure, maybe not all of them, we can't say all of them will have been lost sales, but we can definitely say that we've helped them bring in the revenue earlier because they were out of stock, and then they hit us up and we're like, how fast can you start with back orders? And then we helped another brand bring in 3,000 revenue over just a week and a half. And then there's other early customers that have jumped on board, and we've helped them at least make over 1,000 lifetime revenue within a week. So given we're bootstrapping and we have limited financial runway, my co-founders feel like we're seeing all the numbers, right? And my co-founders feel like, hey, we're helping them so much, we're giving so much value, which is fine for early customers, but they're not too sure about this in the long run. Now, providing a bit more context before I get to my question, I've based our pricing model on two things. So first one is pull pricing instead of push pricing based on my SaaS experience, which is pull pricing is we're not gaining any features behind higher tiers to force people to upgrade. And second is we're using value metrics. So instead of commission fees. So based on a merchant's number of orders, so that we can be seen as, hey, we will grow with you. We're your growth partner. We're not just a cost item trying to squeeze the money out of you. So my question is, what do you think is the right approach at this stage and then later on to make sure that my co-founders don't feel like it's a one-sided value?
Yeah, look, pricing is an art form, and there's books on pricing for SaaS apps, for services, for products. I've even featured pricing specialists on pricing strategists on my podcast before. So this is definitely a specialization. In general, though, so long as the customer perceives a beyond level or beyond fair value exchange in their favor, that's usually what I consider the North Star of any pricing model that you come up with. You want your customers to feel like they're getting a better deal out of this than what you are. And I contextualize this in my own career by saying, look, as a consultant, I want my customers that work with me to feel like they won the lottery. That's the goal. I want them to feel like once they work with me, maybe at first they might look at my pricing and go, typical consultant prices or whatever. But I don't really care what their initial opinion of my pricing is, because my pricing is set as a filtering mechanism as much as it is an income mechanism. The reality is my ICP is $20 million brands or more. They're doing, on the merchant side, now I've got different ICPs for different target markets, but on the merchant side, they're typically B2B brands. They're doing at least $20 million a year in GMV across all channels. They've got a mandate or buy-in at the highest levels of the business for e-commerce, etc. There's a few other components to this ICP, but my pricing acts as an additional filtering layer based on what I know my ICP, A, can afford, and B, the value that I bring to those businesses. And I've been able to do that consistently year in, year out, year in, year out. I know that my pricing acts as a very powerful filtering mechanism to attract the right type of ICP clients that I know I can rapidly move the needle for them in their business and help them move the needle in their business. I think there's a couple things here. One is you've got to set pricing that's sustainable for you. You've got to set pricing that's good value for the customer. You've got to set pricing that acts as a filtering mechanism for your target ICP. And you also have to set pricing that you're not going to have to change every 6 months. Consistency in pricing, I think you have to have a recognition, especially when you're starting out as a SaaS app, that we're not where we want to be. We're still in beta, we're still developing our product, we're still finding product market fit, we're in the early days. And I think so long as you're very transparent in those earliest days, hey, this is introductory pricing until we get to a place where we've got like a full-blown, finished, quality, polished app that's got 80% of the launch features that we want to have. Until then, we're going to be running some pretty heavy discounts on our platform to onboard merchants at scale to give us feedback and grow the rate and increase the rate at which we can improve our technology. That's the goal. That's the pricing goal. And I think as long as you're super transparent about that in the beginning, this is not the pricing you're going to have a year from now. This is not the pricing you might even have 6 months from now. This is introductory pricing. We think it's probably going to end about here or land about here in a year's time once we get to our full-blown production V1 release. We think this is about where it's going to land. We're obviously going to communicate this with you in advance. Nothing's going to come as a surprise. You're going to have a chance to opt out. We're probably even going to grandfather you in at that point for an additional 6 months or a year or whatever it is on the old pricing model out of respect for you as our first clients. And I go back to what's happened with Opus Clip. And Opus Clip, I was a beta user of Opus Clip even before they charged, like when it was still a free platform. And when they started charging me and charging pretty good money on a subscription basis, I couldn't wait to smash the subscribe button fast enough. I literally couldn't. I was like, man, just give me a way to pay you because you guys it is such a cool product. And I've so deeply integrated this platform into my content production workflow that I can't live without it. It's too good. It is too good. And it makes my life so much easier from an operational perspective that within reason, almost anything you would charge, I would probably pay. And then they very rapidly, as soon as they introduced a paid tier, and they said, look, within 30 days, you will need to make a decision whether you want to continue using Opus Clip. And by the way, because you were a beta user of our platform, we're giving you, I think it was, they didn't give a discount. What they did is they were really clever about how they did it. They said, the standard annual plan gives you, I think it's X number of hours of clips that you could create or X number of uploads that then could be converted into clips. And I think what they did, this is going back a few years now, but I think what they did is they gave us double. If we were one of the original beta users of the free tier of the platform, instead of giving us a discount, they charged us full price, but they gave us a double allotment, a double allocation of the hours of uploads that we could do to be converted to clips. And I thought, that's cool. They're getting the money in, they're getting full price, but they're giving me a massive benefit for effectively being an early beta user when the product wasn't that polished. And I gave them lots of feedback as a user. Oh, you could do this to make it better. Oh, you could do this to make it better. This would help me a lot. And I didn't feel genuinely, I was excited to pay them because I was like, at some point, you got to make some money to keep developing this platform. And it's so valuable to me. I want to pay you so that you stick around, so you don't go out of business, and so that you continue to improve this platform. And within that first 6 months, they launched a ton every single month. In fact, it felt like every single week they were launching new features in that first 6 months, and that was no extra charge. It was just, there's one tier. You get everything they offer, you pay your annual subscription, and you get everything. And it felt like they were just releasing all these new features. And even in the last few months, they've released a ton of new AI-driven features where you can describe the types of clips that you want to grab from your content, and it will go find exactly that, and it will pull that clip out. And I said all that story, this is a long-winded way of saying, they presented so much value to me before I ever had to pay anything that it was like, it would have been like losing an arm if I lost them. And so it was like, I couldn't wait to give them money. And I think the goal that we want to have is we want to, with your app, show so much value and so much, you want it to become so essential to the success of their business in the situations that you work in, that then when you start asking for money, it's the same as me. I want to pay you. I want you to continue to add features to the platform. I want you to be successful. I want you to grow. I want you to stay in business. And I know you need to make money to do that. So whatever kind of pricing model you can put in place initially to get high adoption and high feedback rates, And as long as you're transparent, hey, this is probably not the price that we're going to end up at, and this may not even be the pricing model we land on ultimately. I think as long as you do those things, what you do in the pricing in the short term is less relevant to the value you try to bring in the short term.
I love that. I love that story. Thanks for sharing. Speaking of the non-monetary offer or promo, we actually do that for mid-sized businesses, and that leads to my second question. That's actually a great lead-in. So we've been targeting the mid-sized businesses and telling them that, hey, you can use our $49 plan, but you'll have the quota for our $99 plan, which is more orders. Like I mentioned, the value metrics, right? You get more orders, more pre-orders, more back orders quota. So the willingness to pay is definitely there. It's more of a question around how much for the mid-sized businesses, but then now leading into my second question about the smaller brands. So like I mentioned, we eventually want to target bigger brands, but I want to understand the different use cases and edge cases. So we've been also speaking to smaller brands. As part of our outreach, so what I do for outreach, we've started to do inbound as well. When I come across brands running ads announcing pre-orders, I reach out to them and say, hey, are you experiencing XYZ? If this is relevant to you, we can set up a trial pre-order campaign for you. So what I'm coming across is some small businesses, and then I go to ads library, right, to look at the number of ads, active ads they're running. Sure, I don't know how much their total budget is, but I can definitely see that they have to run ads. Maybe it's an industry norm. And then so they calculate this and that, like in the conversations when considering even for our lowest tier plan. So I've noted this, right, particularly among small business owners. When I say small, it's probably the team size because I'm speaking directly to the owner, the founder, and not necessarily reflecting the ARR. So my assumption is because they don't have as much commercial acumen, they aren't able to see the true ROI. They see ads because it's an industry norm. Like everyone out there is like talking about, hey, run ads, that's how you use money, make money. Whereas an app like ours, and we have case studies now, right, to show them, they still can't connect the ROI. So long-winded way to ask the question that people do say that, hey, if you're in the middle ground, that's where you die. Like you should be either targeting like smaller brands because of the quantity, or you target bigger brands because of the quality. But it feels like right now we're playing in the middle ground, and that's what working for us. But I don't think that's what we should be doing. It's a
I
weird,
think that you can cater to both types of merchant in your pricing. Now, let me explain what I mean by that.
yeah,
There's no rule that says you can't have a different pricing model for smaller brands versus big brands. Now, what I mean by that is you could say, okay, for our smaller brands, you're going to pay $20 a month, $50 a month, whatever it is. You're going to pay a fixed fee, and that is up to 1,000 or 10,000 or 50,000 or whatever number you choose that sort of signifies that it's a smaller brand. You could say, look, you're going to pay a fixed fee all the way up to 20,000 pre-orders a month, or whatever that number is that makes sense to you, that you can handle from an infrastructure perspective all the costs behind running that app and make a little bit of profit, right? But what you could do is you can shift to a different pricing model once someone goes over that level, so over that 20,000 a month average over a 6-month period or something like that, and automatically move them to a price per secured pre-order model. That's a skin in the game model, right? You could say, okay, we're now going to move you off of this flat pricing tier. Now that you've now tipped yourself over on average for the prior 3 months, or you could say it prior 3 months, prior 6 months, whatever it is. Your rolling average of pre-orders now puts you into an enterprise tier. And once you roll into that enterprise tier, now we move to a skin in the game model where we're taking a clip of the ticket, a very tiny clip of the ticket. The value we bring is very clear by this stage. Once you get up to that level of pre-orders that we're helping you secure, the value is very clear at that point. It's so clear that the tiny percentage we're going to take seems like nothing in comparison to the extra value we're bringing to the business. I think you can have two different pricing models, and I've seen this before in other SaaS applications, whereby it's not just fixed tiers all the way up and say, okay, X number of orders to X number of orders is this tier, X number of orders to this X number of orders is this fixed fee per month, and then you go over that, it's this fee per month, fixed, flat fee. I have seen this where you say, okay, we're a fixed fee maybe there's a small free tier that's a fixed fee up to this number of orders. Then our first paid tier is up to this number of orders per month that we generate for you. And then anything above that puts you into enterprise. And all bets are off once you get into the enterprise, and you can price it however you like from there. This feels like the only way that you can prevent the small guys and girls from feeling like they're getting nickel and dimed to death, because everybody wants a bite of that apple, right? When you're small, Klaviyo, Gorgeous, everybody wants a bite of the apple when you're small, right? And they want to clip the ticket on something as it flows through your business. But as a small business owner, those variable costs can get out of hand very quickly when you're small. And by being able to budget, by saying, okay, I know I'm not going to pay any more than $50 a month or whatever it is, doesn't up to this level, which is I'm probably 2 years away from needing to think about this again. I know I'm going to only pay this much per month. It's not nickel and diming me to death. I'm not having the clip of the ticket given away to everybody. That is oftentimes, because remember, this fixed OpEx model for a budgetary perspective for these small brands is really important to them. Once you get bigger, you have lots of variable OpEx costs in your business. So you're used to variable OpEx costs. You need to have more fixed costs that are predictable, that you can budget around. And you can say, we need to do X number of orders per month in order for us to survive. We need to do X number of a month to be profitable. We need to do X numbers a month to be super profitable. And those unit economics, when you start moving up that value chain, and you start amortizing those fixed costs over an escalating number of orders, that amortized cost on a relative basis drops dramatically as you grow. So I understand your desire to say, look, as you scale, we scale, and therefore we clip the ticket on that growth that we help to facilitate. I get that. But I also understand where these merchants are coming from when they're still small, where they feel like, shit, everybody's here with their hand out. Every single piece of our technology, those vendors are here with their hand out. And it's really hard to manage your budget in that kind of environment.
Yeah, that's why our free plan at the moment is just 10 pre-orders per month, 10 back orders, no commissions, fees.
Yep.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to how I frame that pricing model back to them. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Actually, while we're on the topic of pricing, I love all the stories and advice you're sharing. On top of your mind, for your audience who are listening to this episode, are there any episodes or guests on top of your mind that myself or anyone who's listening to this should revisit in your podcast, that the guests you've brought on for pricing?
Yeah, I think everybody should go and follow Hamish Mackay from Order Editing on LinkedIn. He's a good Kiwi boy. He's now over in the US. Him and his business partner are building up Order Editing. And I think what he's doing from a content perspective and also from a value proposition perspective with their app is so clever, and they're doing such a good job of that, and they're onboarding lots of new merchants regularly into their platform. I think listening to how he contextualized how they built their business, how he's contextualized their growth plan, how he's contextualized his go-to-market planning, messaging, content, flywheel. I think listening to his episode, I can't think of the number of the episode off the top of my head. It's maybe 50 episodes ago he was on the podcast, roughly. Just search Hamish Mackay, the E-commerce Edge podcast. But also go and follow him on LinkedIn and follow his content in how he is demonstrating in his content. He talks about specific use cases of his app and the value that it has brought to his customers. Very specific. Like he said, this brand's number of inquiries, like they eliminated 3,000 tickets average per month or something like that. Like he gets very granular about the value that his app has brought to that specific merchant when he talks about that use case. And so I think he's been very clever about how basically he demonstrates that the price that they charge is so insignificant to the value that they bring to their merchants, and they can quantify that value very quickly by saying this is how much they spend on average to resolve a help desk ticket. They eliminated an average of 3,000 order editing help desk tickets a month, so that equates to X number of dollars saved per month. He just breaks it down so clearly that when you compare that to how they charge for their platform, you realize, geez, okay, this is literally like a 10th or a 20th or the 50th of the money that this brand is saving, that they're spending on the app. So it's like the return on investment is so insane that it's literally a no-brainer, that you'd be an idiot not to use this app. And that's where I want you to get to as well, to where your pricing gets to a point where it becomes an absolute no-brainer, a default no-brainer for a merchant to say yes.
Yeah, because I followed him recently after you mentioned Hamish to me. It's very tangible, right? Those results. So I think at our stage, it's about getting those early customers, like I mentioned just now. We've already achieved those revenue results, but then be able to get the agreement to feature them in our content as well. Which again, Jason, you're great at this. Leading into my next question. So this question is around content for the bigger brands. So I've already worked out, I believe so anyway, based on the incoming installs. So I've worked out the inbound and community content for the small to mid-sized businesses. We're starting to see inbound app installs, which is great. And that's based on keyword research and our early customer interactions. So just to share with your audiences, so things like there's a lot of videos out there. So we have pre-order app and partial pay app. There's a lot of content out there that talks about, the best pre-order apps out there. Why should you do pre-orders? Should you do pre-orders or should you get stock first? So this sort of like very top of level shallow content, but there's a lack of content, and that's what customers are asking around managing customer expectations around pre-orders, back orders, when out of stock. What's the policies that we should write for? All the things beyond installing an app, like to establish the customer trust. So we've been like building out content on that, and now we're seeing the inbound installs, which is great. I'm mindful of neglecting LinkedIn though, and for the content for the bigger brands, because so getting a bit of vulnerable here with my repeated redundancies, and as we've only just launched our app, I feel like I don't have anything worth posting about yet. Because yes, we've got some results from our early customers, but that's still very early stages. So I don't post fluff. Jason, you might have seen my content before, and I don't comment on posts just for the sake of commenting. So I feel like I'm in for the lack of better word, writer's block. So what content
Yes.
will help me connect with the bigger brands ICP? So say, for example, e-com managers or founders managing bigger Shopify brands. And I'm not talking about selling to them. It's just connecting, building rapport, getting on the radar. What do they care about that would also potentially overlap with what our app offers?
Yeah, look, this is a challenge I think all content creators face at some point or another, but I wouldn't discount the value that the content that you have been creating and is resonating with smaller brands. I wouldn't discount that as never resonating with larger brands. And here's why. Because the scale of the challenge might be different as they scale, but the challenges are largely the same. It's like Hamish, right? He's talking to small brands that have 50 tickets a month when they're still small for order edits, but the same exact problem when you scale up your brand, the scale of the problem increases geometrically with the scale of your brand. So I wouldn't necessarily automatically assume that the content you're producing is no longer relevant just because a brand is bigger than some of the small brands that your content is resonating with. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Second of all, you have to create a way to be constantly tapped into the bloodline of industry news that you can competently comment on. So, for example, I'm subscribed to 50 different industry newsletters. I have Google alerts set up for a whole bunch of topics related to e-commerce. I created a separate email, a separate Gmail account just for all of the inbound content that comes into me from my Google alerts, newsletters, and other sources, right? Because I didn't want my main account to be spammed with all this content. So I have an email account that is just a collection and I get 50 to 60 new emails in that inbox a day of industry news that I can quickly filter for and search for specific keywords and topics that then I can pull out and I can refer to and I can comment on and give my punditry and my opinion and my hot take on, so that if I don't have anything for that day, so let's say I mix it up, I try to mix it up. I try to mix it up on punditry. I try to mix it up on what I'm doing in my business and what I'm learning in my business and I can talk about. I try to mix it up with posts about my podcast and specific episodes that I think might be interesting to people. I try to mix it up so that it doesn't get boring for people consuming my content, but I always have one of my inboxes packed with constant industry news that I can just quickly have a look through the 10 most recent emails, and within one of those emails, I will see something in there that grabs my attention. Ooh, that's interesting. I want to talk about that today. You need to be able to create an environment somehow, some way that works for you. Maybe it's subscribing to specific YouTube channels, or maybe it's subscribing to people on, anyway, that newsletter platform. It's just skipped my mind. But anyways, there's all sorts of industry sources of news, of the latest news, of latest happenings in the industry, payments.com. There's a whole bunch. There's a whole bunch of them out there. And Google Alerts will help you find those as well. That's what I'd be talking about. And I would be, some of the topics around e-commerce that are very adjacent to what you do are supply chain. So I would be looking at lots of supply chain and e-commerce related content to supply chain and saying, look, this is why we exist. Because supply chains are inefficient, they're challenging, they're expensive. We're back up now for a container ship from China to the US. We are now back up to COVID cost levels now of freight costs. So now people are trying to move to air freight for some of their smaller items, their lighter items. Your app really specifically helps brands to address supply chain challenges and its impact on the customer experience. And so that's where I think there's fertile ground there, because there's so much discussion right now around digitalized supply chain, digital twins, challenges in supply chain, what the impacts are. I just think that's fertile ground. That would be my thought, my assumption, is that's fertile ground for you to speak to, because it directly correlates to what your app does. And so if you're seen as the guru of e-commerce supply chain knowledge and understanding, keeping people up to date what's happening in the industry, and you speak to that fact, and occasionally, without selling, just saying, this is why we created our app, because these challenges are not going to go away in our industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jason.
Does that feel like it spurred new ideas about how to keep the good ideas flowing?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because I've been, like I mentioned in my question just now, I've been struggling with my LinkedIn content because I feel like we're at that early stage where we don't have results to show for yet, the tangible results. So thank you
Yeah,
for the supply chain. And I've only been thinking about the cash flow perspective, but bigger
yeah,
brands, sometimes not all of them care about cash flow. So supply chain
yes.
is a great one. Thank you.
No worries. Listen, fantastic questions for me today. I think hopefully some really generally beneficial content around what you and I are discussing. I think this is very broadly applicable to lots of different tech vendors and platform vendors out there trying to figure out your very early days, but regardless of where you're at in trying to be, and I consider your technology a commerce enablement technology. So you're not an e-commerce platform in your own right. You're a commerce enablement technology, and there are tens of thousands of pieces of software out there that are intended to be commerce enablement technology. So I think this is very relevant what you and I are discussing today. I really appreciate it.
Before we started recording, I was sharing an update with Jason about our pricing. So we went to market targeting smaller Shopify stores and businesses. We went the approach with no commission fees. That's based on our research, both qualitative, like talking to the merchants and looking at the App Store reviews. But now we've quickly realized that, hey, we're adding a lot of value, especially to the bigger brands, that it's not sustainable for us. And we just want to find a balance point. Inbound app installs, for your audience context, a lot of them are small businesses, but I'm also doing outreach to bigger businesses. So we're trying to find a balance between the two. So Jason and I were just having a conversation. He was sharing some advice, and I thought it would be useful for the audience as well.
Yeah, look, the term I used was price anchoring, right? There's a when you think about pricing strategy, and I have had a few I don't claim to be a pricing specialist, but I certainly have subscribed to plenty of SaaS platforms. I've definitely worked with many partner SaaS platforms over the years. So I think I understand the psychology as a buyer of SaaS technology. I've also had a few pricing strategists and specialists on the podcast at different times who've shared sort of their opinions, their views, their recommendations. And one of the things that is common in the pricing world is this concept of price anchoring, which is when you set a price, like you always want to be in any pricing negotiation. So let's say I was going to buy a car, or let's say I was going to buy a house, or whatever it might be. I always want the price anchoring to be done by me, meaning that I will verbalize, or in writing, set a price that I think is fair or reasonable, that is got the base point of any pricing negotiation. And I think we need to think about that same psychology, because if you let the other person anchor the price, then all of a sudden you're starting the negotiation from their price point instead of from your price point. And so I think that this same psychology applies to SaaS technology. And I think that it's easier if you establish a slightly higher price point to start with than a slightly lower price point that you then have to adjust in 3, 6, 12 months down the track, and you've got to maybe double your pricing, or you've got to radically change your pricing structure in terms of the tiers and the way that you price. I think it's easier to start out with a slightly higher price point and then do some sort of special promotion or deal or campaign for your first 50 users, 100 users, 200 users, 500, whatever it is. Here's our normal price. It's $200 a month or whatever it is. But for you, because you're one of our first 50 users or 100 users, whatever it is, we're going to give you 50% off for the first 12 months or until we come out of beta, or whatever reason you come up with for giving them a discount for taking a punt on you basically as a startup, right? Because you're a startup and you've got startup technology you're not a household name yet in the App Store. You're not a household name yet with Shopify. You're not a Klaviyo yet, for example. And so until you get to that level of name recognition in the market where you become almost like a default install with with a big chunk of Shopify deployments, I think you can come up with almost any reason to get these beta trial first customers on board, and you can almost offer them kind of any deal you want, but let's anchor the price point at the price point it is likely to be at when you get to a point where you've got some traction in the market. And okay, this is our price. And you could even have a free tier for life, a free for life tier up to a certain number of transactions a month, say, for example. So there's ways to slice this in such a way that you don't permanently devalue the perception of value of your app. So I think just be real careful about where you anchor the expected price point in the market, to where you go, okay, we know we've got this pipeline of new functionality that we're going to deliver to the industry. We know that we're going to be innovating forever on our app, or we have an expectation that we're going to innovate forever. So there's always going to be new capabilities that we're going to be adding to the platform. So it is the price point that we're setting initially, is it going to get us like to at least like the 2 or 3 year mark of the lifespan of our business, so that we don't have to go through a major repricing exercise, which anytime you make any price, especially significant pricing changes, if you're doing like what Zero does, which is every time they make a price change, like 2%, 5%, 10%, whatever it is, that's what I'd consider in the grand scheme of things relatively minor. But if you completely change the way you price, if you go from a fixed fee to a transactional fee, for example, that's what I would consider a major pricing model change. And that is where you can pretty rapidly alienate your existing base of customers that kind of signed up with you under the old model, and now you're radically changing the model. Like, for example, TechSmith, they just recently switched from, and I use Camtasia from the final edits of my podcast, video of my podcast, and they've switched from a one-off license that where you buy for maintenance for 12 months, you pay this fixed fee, and then if you don't want to continue to pay for maintenance, you don't have to, and you just stay on the version that you're on, and you can continue to use it forever. It's a local app that gets installed on your local machine. And now they're moving to a SaaS model, where basically it's a full-blown subscription model to the platform. And basically every time you open up the app, it's phoning home to the mothership. And basically if you don't have an active subscription, you can't use the app. And so I'm going to stay on my old version of the software basically until it's no longer usable on modern hardware, because I don't want to go onto a subscription. They don't, so far, they haven't come out with frequent enough massively beneficial updates for me to say, oh, this makes sense. They're going to come out with new updates every quarter or something like that. It's going to massively improve my editing experience. No, these are incremental, tiny little incremental changes where I don't see the value of a subscription. And so they're going to lose me as a customer, and I will just stay with the old version as long as and then if at some point I feel like I need a better piece of software, I'll probably try to find one that I can locally install and pay one fixed fee of $300 or $500 or whatever it is, and then own it. I want to own the software. I don't want to rent that piece of software, because I rent plenty of SaaS software. I don't want to rent this too. And it's just because they already set, for the last decade, they set the expectation in my mind of how I would consume their software. And now all of a sudden, which for me, if I went to the subscription model, I'm going to probably end up paying roughly double what I paid for the previous upgrades that I paid for that I felt were worthy of the upgrade. In total, on average, I'm probably going to pay twice the amount per year under their new model, which it's so transparent, which is why they're doing it. And it's the same with, I was a subscriber to Loom, right? And they had their free plan forever, and you could download and you could up to a certain number of recordings. They radically changed that when they were about to go public, or they were looking at being acquired, which they ultimately were acquired. They radically changed. First of all, they dramatically limited the capabilities of their free plan to make it pretty much completely useless. And then even at their lower tiered business plans, which I was paying for, until you moved up to their middle tier, just from going off memory here, you could no longer download the videos. You could only share the link of a video.
Yes.
And I was already a paying customer, but they basically forced me into the next tier up just to regain the capability of downloading the looms that I recorded, so that I could then inject them into my video edits for intros of podcasts. And when I was doing like reviews of websites and things like that. And that was so crappy. That was such a crappy change to their experience that I didn't renew. I canceled my thing and I went with a completely different screen recording platform instead. So they lost me forever, right? I probably won't ever go back to Loom as a result. And so I think that these platform vendors, they get a little bit of traction, they get a little bit of popularity, and it feels like they destroy, or they can destroy, the very thing that made them popular in the first place, which is value for money, right? It's the value for money piece, right? And they think, oh, we provide so much value and we're so irreplaceable that people will tolerate any kind of price change or any kind of pricing model change, any kind of feature functionality change associated with a tier that we like. But in practice, I know that's not the case. You will hemorrhage a certain percentage of customers if you make a radical change to your pricing model. So I think it's better to set your pricing a little bit on the high side to start off with, even if you think it's a little bit high. It's a little bit high in anticipation of new features and functions you're going to roll out over the coming 12, 24, 36 months, and then just do deals to get people on board, your first cohort of customers on board from there.
I love chatting about pricing. It's such a fascinating aspect. I've made some notes based on your suggestions and advice. You mentioned just now about Loom. I'm a Loom user as well. Yeah, they've converted to push pricing when I was doing research for our app as well, forcing you to
Yes.
upgrade just for one feature. So we're
Yes.
very mindful of that approach. That's why we took the pool pricing approach. We don't gate features behind more expensive tiers, no commission fees. But obviously, coming back to my point, is now we're trying to find a point where we can be sustainable so that we can keep going,
Yes.
where it's still the
Yes.
merchants are still finding value. So with no commissions, we'll probably stay that way. But what we're looking into, and that's more so a technical perspective, is if it goes above the limit, then can we charge commission fees? So if you stay within the limit, there'll be no commissions fees for every month. So that's something that we need to look into how to implement technically. But that's
Yes.
been like a new feedback that's coming in from businesses. Again, I know, Jason, you've mentioned that we should target either one, like either under 1 mil ARR or either over 1 mil ARR. So the inbounds have been under 1 mil, but outreach, I've been
Yes.
trying to reach out to the over 1 mil just to get some feedback on what we should build in the future. So that's why it's a bit tricky. And again, that's also another thing. It's visually hard to comprehend when I guess people compare our apps pricing, because we charge already a bit higher, but because we don't charge commission fees, compared to when they look at other apps, it's lower per month. But then you click into the listing, then they tell you that they charge commission fees. So that's another challenge out there. But yeah, we're just working out how to find the right balance and having chats with experts like yourself so that we can get to the right place.
And look, pricing strategy. It is definitely a thing. In fact, off air, I'll send you a link to one of those pricing strategy folks that I've had on my podcast previously, who that's their specialization. They go in and they specifically help brands to create a pricing strategy that is a differentiator for them in the market, that actually helps build a moat around their brand. And that's really ultimately what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to not only be sustainable, but how can it become a UVP? How can we build a moat? And this goes for retail sellers who are selling physical goods too. It's not just SaaS platforms or apps or whatever. It's pricing of everything that you're selling in the marketplace. And I think about my business. One of the things that differentiates myself, that every one of my customers tells me is one of the reasons they chose to work with me, was because I don't do a retainer. Mine is a subscription. It's a fixed monthly fee for all you can eat services with just a reasonable fair use policy wrapped around that,
Mm,
to where people can't. I've never had a customer try to take advantage of that.
yeah.
I've just put a little bit of a safety net in there to make sure that I got a very reasonable, very generous fair use policy associated with my services. But the people that I work with love the fact that they know exactly what they're going to pay every month. It's not like it's a surprise. It's not like they're going to go, oh, okay, I've got a retainer of 20 hours and this month I consume 30 hours, so I'm going to get an extra bill at the end of the month, a shock bill for an extra 10 hours this month. They know they can budget for it, they can plan for it, and they know exactly the value they're going to get for the money that they pay. And I find that agencies, 99% of the time, they do a retainer model, which is understandable because oftentimes they've got a multitude of resources that they've got to apply to a customer. And so to make that kind of unlimited for a fixed fee, it becomes really difficult to manage resources in that environment. Whereas in my business, because I've got partnerships that I have, like I'm not a vendor, I'm not a tech vendor, I'm not an agency, so I don't do delivery. And so therefore, when I help my customers go to market, for example, to find an implementation partner, that's fine if the implementation partner runs a retainer-based model, post-live or whatever it is, or a project-based model or whatever it might be. That's totally fine. But when somebody comes to a consultant, they really like to have a visualization. Okay, is this engagement going to cost me like 10 grand? Is it going to cost me 100 grand? Like they need to know, they need to have some level of certainty that we're going to achieve certain things over a given window of time. And so when I first started setting my pricing and my pricing model, first of all, I knew that my pricing was insane value. Like I knew it was insane value because I intentionally priced myself at an insane value point. But I wanted my pricing model to be part of my UVP. I didn't want it just to be my knowledge, my skill, my capability, my ability to help move the needle in their businesses. I wanted over and above the value that I deliver in terms of services, I wanted actually the way that I priced to also be part of the value that I provide. So that's why I did it that way. And when I looked out there and I looked across all the consultants in the market, first of all, there was hardly any B2B specialized consultants to begin with. But even of those, almost every single one of them was operating on a retainer model. And so I was like, what can I do? How can I lower my admin overhead of managing my clients and managing my time with them? Because I don't want to track every single second that I spend with them, because the overhead of tracking that time and then generating month-end billing by hours and then exporting the hours and then importing that in and generating a month-end invoice and all, it's just, I've done it because I've built agencies before. So I know the nightmare of administrative overhead associated with managing retainers and rolling over. If you don't quite use your retainer, but you're billing for that retainer, then rolling over hours. And then at what point do they expire? How long do you roll them forward? How long do you let people, how much do you let people go over before you start billing in arrears versus deducting from the next month's retainer? There's all sorts of complexity when you're trying to manage the retainer experience for customers. And I know because I've done it for years and years in the agency world. And I was like, first of all, I don't want that headache. I do not want the hassle of me spending hours a month just managing the retainers of my clients and billing them and giving them updates on where they're at on the consumption of their retainer and blah, blah, blah. I didn't want that overhead. And so I was like, what can I do to make my life easier, but also to make my customers' life easier and more stress-free? Why don't I just go with a flat subscription model? And which is, they're used to that in the SaaS world. They're used to paying that fixed monthly fee. So why don't I do consulting as a service? And that's one of the key differentiators from my business in the market too, and something that I think presents massive value for my customers. And the feedback that I've gotten has been very positive around that as well. So I think anything you can do that makes your pricing model a differentiator is a good thing.
I love that you talked about your consulting side of things, because that could lead into one of my other questions. So for most of our inbound app installs, they're just small businesses. They already see the value of pre-orders, which is great, which is why they install partial deposits. But obviously they need to drive website traffic to be able to experience our app's value. So I found myself in those onboarding calls, essentially using my digital marketing experience to make recommendations on how to drive traffic, what they need to do, and even doing a little mini audit. But then obviously it touches on cash flow, because it's pre-orders, securing cash flow earlier. And I'm still learning about this aspect myself, because as a marketer, often you're not held responsible or held accountable for this aspect. So how should small businesses with limited cash flow approach their marketing to drive traffic without overextending the cash flow? And especially when Black Friday is coming up, this will be like super important to, I guess, a lot of people out there as well.
Yeah, look, I don't claim to be a marketing specialist, and I don't offer marketing services to my clients. All of my consulting is tech and ops focused consulting. So I don't claim to be a marketing specialist, but I just know what works for my business.
Mm.
And so I don't do outbound. I don't spend I don't spend any money on paid and performance marketing. I'm trying to be a magnet instead of a lasso. That's what I'm trying to be. And I think that's something that brands could definitely learn from. It's just I find, and this is something that I see continuously on Reddit. Oh, I set up my new Shopify store. I've been up and running for a month. I spent $5,000 on meta ads or $1,000 on meta ads. Haven't had a single conversion. This is just a constant struggle for most brands. They struggle to get traffic and they struggle to convert that traffic, right? Those are the two big issues, right? But then when I look at their socials, when I look at their website, I look at their proof points on the website, I go to their About Us page, I go to the contact page. It's got no physical address. It's just got a contact form. It doesn't even have an email address, or it's got a Gmail email address. It doesn't have an email at the domain. There's no founder story. There's nothing emotional. There's literally nothing, and maybe the pricing isn't even that good. Maybe it looks like just another drop shipping website, another Me Too website. The amount of sites that I just go and have a look at because they're on Reddit and saying, I just can't figure out how to grow this business or be successful. The amount of e-com 101 issues with the vast majority of websites that I review are just phenomenal. And I don't know what happens to e-commerce business owners when all of a sudden, when they stand up a website, they don't look as harshly at their own website
Mm.
as they do on websites that they go and shop on. They all of a sudden give themselves a pass where they wouldn't give a pass to if their website was owned by somebody else and they happened to land on that same website, they would be far harder and far more judgmental on that website and far less likely to buy on that website than they expect people to be because it's theirs. And they get emotionally invested. And I understand that. I get, like, when you build up a new business, it's like your heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears are in that business. So I get it. But you have to be able to separate the emotion, right? The emotional tie and connection that you feel with your business. You have to separate that from the value your business brings. And if your business doesn't bring value, if I can go and get the exact same thing off of this crappy, no name, no brand, no trust website, if I can get the same thing off Amazon and it's even 10 or 20% more expensive on Amazon, I'm going to go buy it off Amazon
Mm.
because I freaking trust Amazon. Plus, I'm a Prime member. So I almost always get free shipping. I get Prime Video for free. I get all these benefits of shopping with Amazon that I don't get off of a no name, no brand, no trust, Tom, Dick, or Harry website out there. And so I think that if brands would be as critical of themselves as they are off of the other brands that they buy from, then they would probably be a lot better off. Secondly, I don't see founders having the balls to be visible. Most founders are not visible. They don't put their picture on their website. They don't put their personal WhatsApp on the website. They don't put their personal email, like their direct email on the website where, hey, if you have any problem, contact me. The buck stops with me. I'm the founder of this business and I will freaking make it right. When I had my pure play business, and this is back in the day, right in the beginning of my career, for 7 years, I ran my own pure play e-commerce business. We had a we'll make it right warranty. That was our signature warranty, a we'll make it right warranty. And that warranty basically said, within reason, we don't have a set in stone warranty. Oh, here, if it's over 12 months, we won't refund you if you've got a problem. We didn't say that. We said, within reason, we will do everything in our power to make you happy, whatever that takes. If you're not happy for whatever reason as a customer, let us know and we will bend over backwards to make you happy. And not in 100% of cases could we make people happy, but 95+% of cases, we would be able to make somebody happy if they were for whatever reason not happy. If a parcel took an extra couple of days to get to them, or if it failed, or if it failed just outside the manufacturer's warranty period, or whatever it was, we would recompensate them, or we'd give them like a 50% credit or 75% credit towards a replacement, or whatever it was. We would always find a way to make that, like, we would ask them, what in the perfect world, what is the outcome you would like to have in a perfect world? If you could just wave a magic wand and make yourself happy, what does that look like? That was always the first question I would ask. And then I would do everything in my power to try to give them that magical outcome that they say they want. And I wasn't always able to do it, but the vast majority of the time I was. And I think people just need to think more like a customer. Just think more like a customer. And if you are not a representative buyer of your products or services, then that's going to be really hard. If you're just in whatever business you're in for the money, that's going to be really hard because you're not part of that community, right?
Yep.
So if a woman who is really into fashion starts a fashion brand, she's part of that community by default because she's already in the fashion community. She's probably already part of some fashion Facebook groups. She's probably already on Instagram she's probably already got followers, and she follows people that are into fashion and fashion shows and all those things. She's probably really into fashion. And if she creates a business in that space, first of all, you run the risk of destroying your passion. So be very careful of turning a passion into a business because it can oftentimes destroy that passion. So that's the first warning. But she will most likely really understand her customer needs and wants and desires because she is part of the same cohort she's trying to sell to. So she already understands that mentality and that those emotional buying triggers. Whereas I think a lot of people, they start up a business because they follow a trend, for example. They see something that's hot, a product that's hot. They think they can drop ship it off AliExpress or whatever it is, and they think they can become a one-product website and just follow the trends and then tail on. They don't have any passion for those particular products. They're just a trend follower. I think those have a limited shelf life because it's really hard to go through the startup journey and do this yourself. The startup journey is flipping hard. Like, I'd use a worse word than that if I could, but like the startup journey is hard. It is gut wrenching. It is soul destroying at times. And only if you really love that thing and only if you really love doing that thing will you stick with it long enough to have a chance at success without bailing out, right? But if you're not passionate about it, get out now because it's going to be hell. It's going to be a living hell for you. And that's the only thing I can say. And I can say, look, you need to be creating content. You need to be doing it daily. You need to be active in your communities. You need to be out there. You need to be visible. You need to be front and center, the face of your brand. You need to be fronting up. You need to have people be able to contact you directly when something goes wrong, especially as a startup. Okay, maybe when you get a little bit bigger and you've got a full-blown customer service team, maybe you take your direct cell phone number off the site or something like that. But the reality is, as a startup, you need to front your business hard, and you need to be super proud and super capable of doing so. And I just don't see a lot of brand owners doing that. I don't see them creating a lot of content. I don't see them creating lots of videos. I don't see them being really transparent about their founder's story and being vulnerable as part of their founder's story. I just don't see a lot of that. And therefore, because I do about 20% plus of my retail shopping online. Now, I know I'm the exception. I know that's not normal. I know most people maybe do 25 to 50% of their shopping online max, and the rest is like physical retail and maybe family members buy for them or whatever. I'm most of the time, I am shopping with the biggest players in Mexico. I'm shopping with the Amazons. I'm shopping with the Walmarts. I'm shopping with the Coppels. I'm shopping with the biggest players in this country because, first of all, I oftentimes can't find direct-to-consumer websites for the stuff I want. But even if I can, and when I do, most of the time, I don't trust them enough to put my credit card details in and trust that I'm actually going to get the goods.
Mm.
And that's from someone who does the vast majority of their shopping online. I'm willing to take a punt more than most people with shopping through direct-to-consumer websites. But the vast majority of the population is even more skittish about that than me. How much harder do you have to work to get one of those people to say yes to shopping on your website? You have to tick lots of boxes for people to trust buying through you.
Yeah. The other thing I'll add is the lack of domain expertise I've noticed. Obviously,
Yeah.
like the lack of marketing knowledge, they can't drive traffic, but completely agree on the putting yourself out there before you complain that, oh, hey, no one's aware about me because you're not even putting yourself out there. And then back to the domain expertise. If they're in it for the money, I've noticed, and they don't know enough, and it shows. Actually, that relates to why they probably don't create content because they're not a domain expert.
Correct. And they're doing it purely for the money. And then they say, this is the latest trend or the hot thing or whatever. I'm not really that interested in it, but I think I can make a quick buck off it. That speaks to exactly what you're saying. They're not a domain expert because that's not the space that they went into. So if they went into something that so let's say they're a gamer, and let's say that's their passion, and they spend 8 hours a day gaming, and then they spend 4 to 5, maybe another 8 hours a day trying to run this e-commerce thing on the side. It would be far better if they went into a business that was about gaming, because at least they would have the industry knowledge to know what's hot, know what's not, know what's up and coming, know the contacts to be able to do the sourcing. Like, they would at least give themselves a chance at winning in that space if they were a true expert on that thing and they were already active in those communities that bought those things.
Yep, for sure. And then beyond marketing, I feel like it'll be worth educating them on things like cash flow, even like inventory management and supply chain, as you mentioned, could be one of our adjacent industries as well. So keen to add your podcast as a recommended learning source for these smaller businesses. Could be in our onboarding emails, definitely in our onboarding calls, but could be in our onboarding emails and blog as well. So just a shout out.
Thank you so much.
Next
Thank you
question.
so much.
So some brands have inquired whether we can add an option to offer pre-orders with $0 deposit. So right now we do partial deposit. The lowest you can do is $1, or capture remaining payment upon delivery. So right now it's capture remaining payment for you at a later date of your choice. So if you're made to order products, it's after X number of days, so you can do ongoing orders. Or if you do, let's just say you sell apparel and you're doing drops, then it will be on a specific date. So I'm assuming the latter. Just I haven't asked every single merchant that have inquired this, but the couple of merchants that said it is for wholesale. So I assume they're doing this because it appeals to the customers and help with conversion rates and also capturing a commitment, because it's zero deposit now, but you're actually paying something upon delivery. So we're happy to build these features, but coming back to our favorite, trying to understand our customers, I don't have chance to talk to them all the time, as in like they won't reply all the time, right? Not all of them. So I'm keen to hear input as well. Curious to understand why they're requesting these features. And those who reply to us, they just say, oh, that's what our customers have requested. So what are the risks for them doing this? And yeah, actually, that's two questions. So why would they want to do this? And what are the risks for them to do this that they might be unaware of?
Yeah, I think obviously the biggest risk is by the time you get the product, or by the time the product drops, it might be 30 to 60 days after they place the order. And with a $0 deposit, the risk is that they cancel the order just before the item ships and they actually get billed. And so therefore you have forecasted manufacturing, supply chain, etc. You've maybe paid a deposit with the contract manufacturer, whatever it is. And now all of a sudden the true demand falls dramatically because a sufficient number of pre-orders cancel within a week or two of the item actually shipping. And I think even in a scenario where there isn't so I just made a pretty significant purchase through Walmart online. I was buying some outdoor furniture, okay? And I'm just using this as an example to help demonstrate the risks of this. Now, I wasn't even this product in theory was in stock. Now this happened to be through Walmart Plus. So this was their marketplace. So this was not sold directly by Walmart. It was sold by a third-party seller. They were transparent about that, sold by. So it wasn't like I was being deceived. But what they did, what was, I thought, deceptive, they gave a date when they expected to be able to ship. And then once I actually placed the order, then I got an email saying we expect to ship at this date, and it was like 3 weeks later.
Oh, wow.
And so I literally went back to them today and I sent an email saying I would like to cancel the order if possible. And when they had the drop down of reason, it was because it wasn't going to be delivered in time. So I really ideally wanted this set for the housewarming that we're having this coming weekend. And so they had already set the expectation by saying, we think we'll ship by this date. And then literally in the follow-up email to the order, no, we think we're going to ship on this date. And I was like, man, what a bait and switch that was. Like that, they must just have a default setting for all their third-party sellers that's 5 days or 10 days or whatever it is after order. They must have to have a default date that they put in, that they populate in there. And then once they get the feedback from the seller of when they expect to ship, then they give you a real-time update when the order is actually placed. But I think that leads to a crappy experience. Now, oddly, they didn't think they said they weren't going to be able to ship until like October 7th. The item was delivered today. It was literally delivered today. The day that I asked to cancel the order, it delivered. Now, I don't know if that hurried them up and they were like, shit, we don't want to cancel this order, so you better get that thing out to this guy today or whatever it was. But anyway, it got delivered today, and we're like, what? It's like the 10th of freaking September. And so I'm thinking to myself, this whole experience was not good. It was not good. And so I think as long as you are reasonably bloody accurate with your expected shipment dates, and as long as someone has the choice of placing that order despite the fact that this might be 30 days from now that I'm going to ship this item, I think as long as you're accurate and you're transparent, then you're probably going to be okay. But you will still there will still be a percentage. There's something about this whole skin in the game thing that I've already paid $1 or I've already paid $5 or whatever you ever paid. It doesn't almost matter what the amount is. It's like free returns. We notice that even if you implement a nominal return charge, we're talking like $1, $2, $3, not even that covers all of your return costs. What we find is that can cut returns in half. Just a nominal returns fee or a nominally painful returns process can dramatically reduce the return percentage, right? And I think it's exactly the same with these pre-orders. You will dramatically decrease the amount of cancellations you will get if you take a nominal upfront payment. And if somebody can't afford a $1, $2, $3, $5 deposit, then they're probably not customers you want to have anyway. That's the way I see it, because you're the kind of customers that you will be courting by having a $0 deposit versus a $1 deposit. That's a different psychological motivation for those customers. Therefore, that's a different cohort that you'll be courting. And I don't think any of us want the dirt cheapest, best deal seeking customers. I don't think anybody wants that as part of their core customer cohort. And I just think if somebody can't make a reasonable deposit for a good that they know is going to come in 30 days, you got to ask yourself, are those a customer we want for the long term? Or is that even the kind of customer that will turn into a long-term customer? I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why we didn't have this feature in the first place, because we were all about, when we built partial deposit, when my co-founders wanted to build partial deposit, I quickly identified that, hey, you're capturing a commitment to buy, not an expression of
Yes.
interest. But somehow we've had inquiries. And so we have, like I said, we're happy to build things if there's a legit reason.
But maybe you make that an A/B testable thing,
Yeah.
because every brand and every type of customer of that brand or of that category of products is different. I assume that those are going to be customers that are likely to cancel at a higher rate, but let's A/B test that. Let's A/B test. Let's run it for a month or 2 months or 6 months with a $0 deposit. Then let's run it, A/B test it for 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, with a $1 deposit. And let's see what the order cancellation rates with those. Like, I don't pretend to know everything, right? I have a clue about customer psychology because I've worked with so many buyers over the years, and I've been a buyer myself for so long. But I don't pretend. I don't think any marketer can pretend to know everything. They might have some hypotheses, but we need to back that up with testing. And I think that every brand, every category, every cohort of customers, every age of customer, every region, every market, they're all different. And I think it's a logical assumption people that make zero deposit have less commitment, therefore they would cancel at a greater rate. But let's prove it. Let's run an A/B test. And so I think anything you can put into your platform easily that allows these different scenarios to be A/B tested against each other and run analytics across those tests, I think the ability to test within your platform, to me, is one of the most valuable things. Right? So if I have to run those tests manually, meaning, okay, here's test one, here's product A, I'm going to run a $0 deposit. I run a test period. I then export all the orders that were placed through the platform. I then have to go back and I have to look at in Shopify which orders were canceled for this product over this window of time. I then can do the math and I can reverse engineer that and see what the percentage of what the cancellation rate is. But that's a whole lot of hoops to jump through to test that out.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of manual effort on my part. If I can do that all in platform and have the platform tell me for my customer cohort what is recommended by the platform, should it be a $0 deposit recommendation or a $1 or a $5 or a $10, let's A/B test. Let's multivariate test this shit. Let's not just do 0 and 1. Let's do 0, 1, 5, and 10 or something like that. And then let's automatically and dynamically test that. And you could even test that within the same product. You could say, we will dynamically select with each customer, we'll dynamically select which deposit they need to make. And we'll ask for $1 from some, we'll ask for a 0 from others, we'll ask for 5 from others. You set which levels of deposit you'd like to A/B test, multivariate test, and we'll run it. We'll run it automatically and dynamically. And then we'll tell you at the end of the test, at the end of the 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or maybe the test ends actually once the product comes back into stock and we start shipping. Maybe that signals the end of the test, and then we run our calculation. So I just think that with AI and even just with rules-based stuff, and even with just machine learning, this kind of thing should not be left up to an owner's assumptions. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I love this idea because our app actually is able to do that because we have a dedicated real-time dashboard and we set up per campaign. That's one of the differentiation from other apps. So you can actually set up campaign A, test this variant, test this payment method, campaign B, etc. So I love that. I've already taken note. I'll post it on LinkedIn as well and give you a shout out. That is such a good idea. I love that. Thank you.
If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.